Some men carry their power so quietly, the world mistakes it for weakness. Rikers Island, 1998. A quiet man in his mid-30s walks into general population. No tattoos, no gang colors, no attitude. He speaks to nobody. The block's most feared crew sees fresh meat. 5 massive inmates who run the place through violence. They surround him at lunch, slap his tray to the floor, shove him off the bench, push him around while the entire block watches. He doesn't react, picks up his tray, sits back down, keeps eating. They mistake his calm for weakness. Next day, the biggest one corners him in the shower. 6'5", serving life for murder. He throws a haymaker meant to end this quietly. The fist never lands. But what did these men not know about the quiet inmate they just chose to destroy? If the story grips you, hit subscribe now. Now let me take you back. Just a few hours before that lunch tray hit the floor. His name was Marcus Cole. And if you saw him stepping off the transport bus that morning, you would have thought he was a schoolteacher. Maybe a mechanic. Someone's quiet uncle who showed up to Thanksgiving and barely said 10 words all dinner. He was 5'11". Broad shoulders, sure, but nothing that screamed danger. His hands were at his sides. His eyes were on the ground. He carried a clear plastic bag with 2 white t-shirts, a toothbrush, and a Bible. That's it. That was everything Marcus Cole brought into Rikers Island. The intake officer barely looked at him. Just another body. Another number. She stamped his paperwork, handed him a bedroll, and pointed down the corridor. Block C. General population. No special instructions. No flags on his file. Now here's the thing. That intake officer had one job. Read the file. The whole file. And if she had, she would have seen something on page 3 that would have changed where Marcus Cole slept that night. But she didn't read page 3. She didn't even flip past page 1. She saw a non-violent offense, a short sentence, and she sent him straight into the wolf den. Block C was not a normal cell block. Believe me, every prison has a reputation, but Block C at Rikers in 1998 had earned something worse than a reputation. It had earned silence. When corrections officers talked about Block C, they didn't raise their voices. They lowered them, because Block C belonged to a crew called the Foundation. 5 men, all massive, all violent, all serving long stretches with nothing to lose. Their leader was a man named Darnell Pitts, 6'5", 280 pounds, serving life without parole for a double homicide. Darnell didn't run Block C the way gangs usually ran things. He didn't deal. He didn't recruit. He controlled through one thing only: fear. Pure, physical, unquestioned fear. If you were new, you paid tribute. If you refused, you bled. If you fought back, you disappeared into the infirmary for weeks. Sometimes longer. The other 4 were just as bad. Ray, Malik, Stokes, and a man everyone called Concrete because that's what it felt like when he hit you. Together, the 5 of them owned every corner of that block. The guards knew it. The warden knew it. And every inmate who slept in Block C knew the rules without anyone ever writing them down. So when Marcus Cole walked onto the block that afternoon with his bedroll under one arm and his plastic bag in the other, every single pair of eyes tracked him. Not because he looked dangerous, because he looked easy. He looked like someone who wouldn't last a week. Marcus found his bunk. Lower rack. End of the row. He made his bed with military corners. Tight. Precise. He placed his Bible on the thin mattress, sat down, and didn't move for 2 hours. Didn't talk. Didn't look around. Didn't introduce himself to anyone. Now, in prison, that kind of behavior means one of 2 things. Either you're terrified and trying to disappear, or you've been somewhere worse and you already know how this works. The problem was, nobody on Block C considered the second option. They saw a quiet man with a Bible and they made up their minds. By the time the dinner bell rang on that first night, Darnell Pitts had already made his decision. He leaned over to Ray during the walk to the cafeteria and said 4 words. New fish. Tomorrow. Lunch. And that brings us back to where we started. The cafeteria. The tray. The 5 men surrounding one. The shove. The laughter. And Marcus Cole, sitting back down with food on his shirt, eating like nothing happened. But something had happened. Something none of them understood yet. Because when Darnell Pitts threw that tray to the ground, he was looking at Marcus Cole's face. And what he saw there was nothing. Blank. Calm. Not scared. Not angry. Just nothing. And Darnell had been in prison for 11 years. He had seen fear in every shape it comes in. He knew what terror looked like behind a man's eyes. And this wasn't it. That should have been the warning. That blankness. That stillness. But Darnell Pitts was not a man who read warnings. He was a man who gave them. So he made his next move. The showers. Tomorrow morning. No cameras. No guards within earshot. Just tile and steam and whatever lesson he decided to teach. He told his crew to be ready. All 4 of them. Just in case. Now get this. Darnell had never needed backup before. Not once in 11 years. The fact that he asked for it this time meant something. Even if he didn't realize it. Somewhere deep in the back of his mind, past all that muscle and rage and pride, some small voice was telling him that the man with the Bible was not what he appeared to be. But Darnell Pitts didn't listen to small voices. He never had. And by tomorrow morning, he was going to find out exactly what that silence cost him. 6:15 a.m. The shower block on Block C was a long room. White tile. No windows. One way in. One way out. Steam from the old pipes made it hard to see past 10 feet. The sound of water hitting concrete echoed off every wall. It was the most private place in the entire facility. And that's exactly why Darnell chose it. Marcus Cole walked in alone. Towel over his shoulder. Bar of soap in his hand. He turned on the farthest showerhead, the one in the back corner, and stood under the water with his eyes closed. Just standing there. Still. Like a man who had nowhere else to be. Darnell came in first. Then Ray. Then Malik and Stokes. Concrete came in last and stood by the door. 5 men. Spread out. Blocking the exit. The showerhead at the far end kept running. And Marcus didn't turn around. Not yet. Darnell walked forward. His feet slapped the wet tile. He stopped about 4 feet from Marcus. Close enough to swing. And that's exactly what he did. No words. No warning. Just a massive right haymaker launched from his hip with every ounce of 280 pounds behind it. Now here's where everything changes. And I mean everything. Marcus Cole didn't flinch. He didn't duck. He slipped. His head moved maybe 3 inches to the left. That's all. 3 inches. Darnell's fist went past his jaw so close it moved the steam. And before Darnell could even pull his arm back, Marcus pivoted on his back foot, rotated his hips, and threw a single right cross. 1 punch. That's all it took. 1 punch and Darnell Pitts, the most feared man in Rikers Island, was off his feet. Not stumbling. Not wobbling. Off his feet entirely. His body hit the tile wall with a sound like a car door slamming. He slid down to the floor and stayed there. His jaw was broken in 3 places. He didn't get up. He didn't move. He was done. Now believe me, what happened next took less than a minute. But if you were standing in that room, it would have felt like a lifetime. Ray charged first. He was big, fast, and angry. Marcus sidestepped him like a man avoiding a puddle on the sidewalk. 1 short left hook to the ribs. Ray folded in half. The sound his ribs made when they cracked was loud enough to hear over the running water. He hit the floor screaming. Malik and Stokes came together. Both at once. Now that's a problem for most men. 2 large, violent men rushing you from different angles in a wet, slippery room. But Marcus didn't look like most men anymore. He looked like something else entirely. His feet moved in a pattern that didn't belong in a prison shower. It belonged in a ring. He caught Malik with a straight jab that snapped his head back so hard his legs gave out underneath him. Unconscious before he touched the ground. Stokes tried to grab him from behind. Marcus dropped his weight, turned inside the grab, and landed an uppercut to the chin that lifted Stokes off his feet. Not by much, but enough. Stokes hit the wet tile face first and didn't get up. Concrete was still standing by the door. He had watched the whole thing. For men, maybe 45 seconds. All four on the floor. One not breathing right. Two not moving at all. And the quiet man with the Bible was standing in the middle of it. Water running down his back. Not even breathing hard. Concrete didn't move. He didn't charge. He didn't speak. He just pressed himself flat against the wall and let Marcus Cole walk past him. That was the smartest decision anyone on Block C had made in years. A guard came running. Officer Whalen, a 20-year veteran who had seen everything Rikers had to offer. He stepped into the shower block, saw the four bodies on the ground, saw the blood mixing with the water running toward the drain, and he froze. He looked at Marcus. Then he looked at the bodies. Then he grabbed his radio and called in the incident. But while he waited for backup, he did something else. He pulled up the intake file on Marcus Cole, and his face went white. He turned to the officer behind him, spoke quietly, almost a whisper. "Nobody told me we booked a former heavyweight champion." The word spread through Block C faster than any punch Marcus had thrown. By breakfast, every inmate on the block knew. By lunch, the story had reached every corner of Rikers. By dinner, nobody sat at Marcus Cole's table. Not out of anger. Out of something much more powerful. Respect. The kind you can't fake and you can't force. That night, Marcus sat on his bunk. He opened his Bible to the page he'd been reading the night before. The block was quiet. Quieter than it had been in years, some of the old-timers said. No threats from the corners. No laughter from the Foundation's usual table. Just the low hum of the lights and the sound of pages turning. For the first time in a long time, Block C felt almost peaceful. That peace lasted exactly 14 hours. At 7 a.m. the next morning, 2 corrections officers showed up at Marcus Cole's bunk. Not regular guards. These were from the warden's office. White shirts, clipboards, the kind of officers who only came to your cell when something administrative was about to go very wrong. "Cole, warden wants you. Now." Marcus stood without a word. He followed them down the corridor through 2 security gates and into the administrative wing. A part of Rikers most inmates never saw. The floors were clean. The lights worked. There were actual windows. Felt like a different building. They sat him in a chair outside a heavy wooden door. He waited 11 minutes. Then the door opened. Warden Patricia Sloan was a small woman with short gray hair and reading glasses that she wore on a chain around her neck. She had run Rikers for 6 years. Before that, she ran 2 other state facilities upstate. She was not someone who raised her voice. She didn't need to. When Patricia Sloan spoke, entire cell blocks changed direction. She didn't offer Marcus a seat. He was already sitting. She didn't offer him water. She sat behind her desk, opened a folder, and read from it without looking up. For inmates in the infirmary. 1 with a jaw broken in 3 places. 1 with 4 fractured ribs. 2 with concussions. All from a single altercation in the shower block. All caused by 1 inmate. "You." Marcus said nothing. She closed the folder, took off her glasses, and now she looked at him. "I know who you are, Mr. Cole. I read your full file. All of it. Including page 3. Now here's where the conflict changes. Completely. Because up until this moment, Marcus Cole's problem was physical. 5 men wanted to hurt him and he handled it. That problem was solved. But what Warden Sloan said next created a problem his fists couldn't fix. "You're currently serving 18 months for a parole violation. Simple. Clean. You behave, you're out in 11 with good time. But what happened in that shower block is now a formal incident. I have 4 men in the infirmary. I have to file a report. And that report goes to the State Review Board. You understand what that means?" Marcus understood. His jaw tightened. Just barely. But enough. It means they can reclassify your sentence. At time. Transfer you to a maximum security facility upstate where your reputation won't protect you. It will paint a target on you. Every young inmate looking to make a name will come for the former champion. Not 5 at a time. 1 every single week. For years. She let that settle. Or, she said. And she paused on that word long enough for Marcus to understand that the next sentence was the real reason he was sitting in this office. Or I can file this as self-defense. Which it was. The security footage from the corridor shows Pitts and his crew entering the shower block together. It shows you entering alone, for minutes earlier. The evidence supports your case. I can make this go away. Marcus looked at her. He knew. There was always an or. There was always a price. I need something from you, Mr. Cole. And there it was. The turn. We have a problem on Block C that existed long before you arrived. Darnell Pitts and his crew have controlled that block for 3 years. We've tried transfers. We've tried solitary. We've tried everything short of scattering them across different facilities, which the state won't approve because of overcrowding. But now Pitts is in the infirmary. His crew is broken. And the entire block just watched one man dismantle them in under a minute. She leaned forward. I don't need you to fight anyone else. I need you to exist. Stay on Block C. Be visible. Be present. Let your reputation do the work. When Pitts heals and comes back, and he will come back in about 6 weeks, I need the block to already have a new order. One that isn't built on fear. Marcus stared at her for a long time. This was not what he wanted. He wanted to serve his 11 months quietly. Read his Bible. Do his time. Go home. He had a daughter outside. 9 years old. She was staying with his sister in Queens. He had promised her on the phone 2 days before his surrender that he would be home before her next birthday. That was the only thing that mattered to him. The only thing. And now this woman was asking him to be something he had spent the last 5 years trying to stop being. A fighter. A symbol. A man defined by what his hands could do. But the alternative was worse. Reclassification. Transfer. Years added to a sentence that was supposed to be short. His daughter growing up without him. Another birthday missed. Then another. Then another. Until she stopped counting. He didn't have a choice. And they both knew it. How long? He asked. 2 words. The first he had spoken since entering the office. Until Pitts returns and the block stays stable. 6 weeks. Maybe 8. Marcus nodded once. He stood up and walked back to Block C without an escort. The guards in the corridor stepped aside as he passed. Not because they were told to, because by now, everyone in Rikers had heard what happened in the shower block. And nobody, not even the guards, wanted to be in Marcus Cole's way. But here's what Marcus didn't know yet. And this is important. While he was sitting in the warden's office making a deal he didn't want, something was happening in the infirmary. Darnell Pitts, jaw wired shut, unable to speak, had managed to get a message to the outside through a guard he had on payroll. A dirty guard named Cortez who had been moving messages and contraband for the Foundation for 2 years. The message was short, just a name and a location. Marcus Cole's daughter. Her school in Queens. Darnell Pitts couldn't throw a punch for 6 weeks. But he didn't need to. He had just aimed the one weapon Marcus Cole couldn't block. 3 days passed. Marcus kept his end of the deal. He walked the block, sat in the yard, ate in the cafeteria at the same table, same seat. He didn't speak to anyone. He didn't need to. His presence alone had changed the entire atmosphere on Block C. Inmates who used to press themselves against the walls when the Foundation walked past now moved freely. Men who hadn't eaten a full meal in months sat in the cafeteria without looking over their shoulders. It was working. Exactly the way the warden wanted. But on the 4th morning, everything changed again. Marcus was in the yard when Concrete walked up to him. Now remember, Concrete was the one who had pressed himself against the wall in the showers. The one who had been smart enough not to charge. He still had that look in his eyes. Fear. But something else too. Something that looked almost like guilt. He sat down next to Marcus on the bench. Didn't look at him. Just stared straight ahead at the fence and spoke quietly. Your daughter. Pitts sent a message out. He's got people on the outside. They know where she goes to school. Marcus didn't move. His hands were on his knees. His fingers didn't curl. His breathing didn't change. But something behind his eyes shifted. Something old. Something that the boxing world had seen many times in the ring but never outside of it. It was the look Marcus Cole used to get in the third round, when his opponent had made the mistake of hitting him too hard too early, and Marcus decided the fight was over. Who carried the message? Marcus asked. Guard named Cortez. He's been running for Pitts since day one. Everybody knows it. Nobody talks about it. Marcus stood up. He didn't thank Concrete. He didn't ask why he was telling him this. He already knew. Concrete had watched Marcus take apart 4 men in less than a minute. And Concrete understood something the rest of the Foundation didn't. That being on the wrong side of Marcus Cole wasn't just dangerous. It was stupid. Marcus walked straight off the yard and directly to the warden's office. He didn't wait to be called. He didn't send a request through the proper channels. He walked through 2 security checkpoints without stopping. Guards shouted at him. He kept walking. One officer reached for his arm. Marcus looked at him. Just looked. The officer let go. He pushed open the warden's door without knocking. Patricia Sloan looked up from her desk. She wasn't startled. She was a woman who had spent 30 years in corrections. Nothing startled her anymore. But the look on Marcus Cole's face made her put down her pen. Cortez, Marcus said. He's on Pitts's payroll. Has been for 2 years. He just carried a threat against my daughter to someone on the outside. Her school. In Queens. The warden's expression didn't change, but her hand moved to the phone on her desk. Slowly, deliberately. Sit down, Mr. Cole. I'll stand. She picked up the phone, made 1 call, spoke for less than 2 minutes. Then she hung up and looked at him. Cortez will be pulled off the floor within the hour. Internal Affairs will handle it. Your daughter's school will receive a police presence by this afternoon. I'll make the call personally. Marcus didn't sit. He stood there, looking at her. And for the first time since he arrived at Rikers, he spoke more than 2 sentences. I kept my end. I walked your block. I sat in your yard. I let every man in this place stare at me like I was an exhibit. And while I was doing your job for you, a dirty guard on your payroll carried a threat against a 9-year-old girl. My daughter, who has nothing to do with any of this. His voice didn't rise. That was the thing. It didn't rise at all. It stayed low and even and absolutely controlled. And somehow that was worse. Worse than shouting. Worse than threats. Because it carried a weight that everyone in the room could feel. This was not a man who was going to wait for Internal Affairs. This was not a man who trusted the system to protect his child. The warden stood up. She came around the desk. And she did something she had never done in 6 years of running Rikers Island. She looked Marcus Cole in the eye and gave him her word. Not as a warden. As a person. I will protect your daughter, Mr. Cole. Personally. That is not a policy. That is my word. Marcus held her gaze for a long time. 10 seconds. 20. Reading her the way he used to read opponents in the ring. Looking for the lie. The hesitation. The bluff. He didn't find one. He nodded. Once. And he turned and walked back to Block C. But this time, when he walked through the corridor, something was different. He wasn't walking like a man keeping a deal. He was walking like a man protecting his family. And every single inmate who saw him pass could feel the difference. The quiet calm was gone. What replaced it was something far more dangerous. Purpose. Cold, focused, unshakable purpose. By that evening, Officer Cortez was escorted off the premises by 2 Internal Affairs investigators. His locker was searched. They found 3 phones, a list of inmate contacts, and $14,000 in cash. He was arrested in the parking lot before he reached his car. And in the infirmary, Darnell Pitts received the news through the only channel he had left. A nurse who owed nothing to anyone told him plainly. Cortez was gone. The message had been intercepted. The school was under protection. And Marcus Cole knew everything. For the first time in his life, Darnell Pitts felt something he had spent 11 years putting into other men. Fear. 6 weeks passed. And in those 6 weeks, Block C became something nobody at Rikers thought was possible. It became quiet. Not the old kind of quiet. Not the kind built on fear and intimidation, where men kept their mouths shut because opening them meant bleeding. This was a different kind of quiet. The kind that happens when the boot comes off the neck and people can finally breathe. Marcus Cole didn't do anything dramatic during those 6 weeks. That's the part people always get wrong when they hear this story. They expect a montage. They expect him training other inmates, breaking up fights, becoming some kind of prison hero. That's not what happened. What happened was much simpler and much more powerful. He just lived. He woke up every morning, made his bed with those same military corners, read his Bible, walked the yard, ate his meals at the same table, same seat. And when someone sat down across from him, which started happening around week 3, he didn't tell them to leave. He just nodded and kept eating. Now here's the thing about power. Real power. The kind that actually changes things. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to perform. It just exists, and people feel it. They orient around it the way plants orient toward light. Not because they're told to, because it's natural. By week 4, the younger inmates on Block C started doing something nobody expected. They started settling their own disputes, without fists, without weapons, without running to a crew for protection. 2 men would have a disagreement over phone time or commissary, and instead of it turning into a brawl, one of them would say, "We're not doing that here anymore." And the other one would back down. Not because Marcus told them to. He never told anyone to do anything. But because the whole block had watched what happened when violence was the first answer. They had seen the foundation crumble in 45 seconds. And they had seen the man who crumbled it sit quietly on his bunk reading scripture every night like it was nothing. That contrast did more than any speech could have done. More than any program. More than any warden's initiative. Week 6. Darnell Pitts came back from the infirmary. His jaw had healed, but it sat slightly different now. Crooked on the left side. Permanent reminder. He walked back onto Block C on a Tuesday afternoon. The whole block watched. Every eye followed him from the gate to his bunk. He didn't look at Marcus. He didn't look at anyone. He went to his bunk, sat down and stared at the wall. Ray, who had healed faster than the others, walked over and stood near him, waiting for the signal, waiting for the old Darnell to say something, to start rebuilding, to take back what was his. But Darnell didn't say a word, because his jaw wasn't the only thing that had been broken in that shower block. Something deeper had cracked. The belief that he was untouchable. The certainty that size and violence were enough. That was gone now, and everyone on the block could see it. 2 days later, Darnell Pitts requested a transfer to another facility. He left Block C on a Thursday morning, handcuffed, head down without looking back. Ray, Malik, Stokes, and Concrete stayed behind. But they weren't the foundation anymore. They were just 4 men serving time, same as everyone else. Marcus watched from the yard as the transport van pulled away. He didn't feel satisfaction. He didn't feel victory. He felt tired. A deep kind of tired that had nothing to do with his body and everything to do with the years behind him. The years in the ring. The years after the ring. The years of being seen as one thing when he wanted to be something else entirely. 3 months later, Marcus Cole was released from Rikers Island on good behavior. The warden signed off on it personally. His sentence was marked as served in full. No reclassification. No transfer. No additional time. The deal was honored. Both sides kept their word. His sister drove him to Queens. It was a Saturday. Late morning. The sun was out and the streets were wet from an early rain. They pulled up in front of a small brick apartment building on a tree-lined block. Marcus got out of the car. He was wearing the same clothes he had worn the day he turned himself in. They still fit. He still looked like a schoolteacher, or a mechanic, or someone's quiet uncle. The front door of the building opened, and a 9-year-old girl came running down the steps so fast she nearly tripped on the last one. She hit him at full speed, arms around his waist, face buried in his chest. She didn't say a word for a long time. Neither did he. He just held her, standing on the sidewalk in Queens, holding his daughter like he was never going to let go. And maybe he wasn't. His sister leaned against the car and watched. She had tears on her face, but she was smiling. She had seen Marcus at his lowest. The night he lost the title. The months after the arrest. The morning he surrendered to begin his sentence. She had watched her brother carry weight that would have crushed most men. And now she was watching him hold his daughter in the sunlight, and for the first time in years, he looked like himself. Not the champion. Not the inmate. Not the man who could break a jaw with one punch. Just Marcus, a father, standing in the light. That night, after his daughter had fallen asleep on the couch with her head on his lap, Marcus sat in the dark kitchen of his sister's apartment. He could hear the city outside. Cars. Voices. A distant siren. Normal sounds. Free sounds. He looked down at his hands. The same hands that had won championships. The same hands that had ended a man's reign of terror in a prison shower in under a minute. They were resting on the kitchen table now. Still. Quiet. Some men carry their power so quietly, the world mistakes it for weakness. But the world is wrong. It always has been. Because real power was never about the fist. It was about knowing when not to use it. And Marcus Cole had always known. From the very beginning, he had always known.